like the CIA? No, wait. No, we don't like the CIA. Do you like movies about or stories about clandestine military operations in foreign countries? Right? Yeah? Well, why do we like that? I'm going to have to figure that out later on my own. Because today, we are enjoying a comic series of a squad of Special Forces guys who get betrayed by some intelligence agency Black Ops Bond-style evil villain. You know, like in the real world. And then we're going to look at the movie. Today on Graphic Adaptations, we're going to talk about The Losers. DC Comics, that publishes Superman and Batman, also had an iconic imprint where they curated some of the best comics of their day. These were usually some kind of alternative to mainstream superhero books. Sandman was an epic anthology of urban gothic and fairy tale adventures connected to dreams. 100 Bullets is maybe the ultimate crime comic unfolding an elaborate web of conspiracies. Why the Last Man is about a global catastrophe that kills every male of every species instantly, except for a guy named Yorick and his pet monkey Ampersand. If you're ever looking for a good read, look for the Vertigo logo and you've got a good shot at finding a gem. Now, to be clear, it's a big catalog and they aren't all winners, but you got a good shot. During their gilded run of endless classic comics, Vertigo publishes The Losers in 2003 to critical acclaim. The entire run is 32 issues, which were collected into 5 volumes. Of course, it should be said that this wasn't the first appearance of The Losers, because The Losers were originally published in the 60s as a World War II comic. Then, in the early 2000s, Vertigo was looking for ways to revive some of their older titles, like The Unknown Soldier and Johnny Double, all 3 of which were received with critical acclaim. Unknown Soldier ran for 4 volumes before it was cancelled, and swapped out the World War II setting for Uganda in 2002. That series wrapped up at 25 issues. Johnny Double, on the other hand, is key for being the first collaboration between Brian Azzarello and Eduardo Rizzo, who basically set the template in that book for what was to become 100 Bullets. So what I'm saying is that The Losers is a successful reboot. Andy Diggle is the writer, and I'm not sure his name is often included with his contemporaries, but he probably should be. He might not have a Sandman like Gaiman or a Transmetropolitan like Ellis. Wait, I can find one that isn't a Predator. He might not have an Invisibles like the great Grant Morrison. In fact, I would consider The Losers his career's defining work. Like, this is the book that I would suggest if you wanted to read some Diggle. But he has plenty of fine credits from classic runs of books. He did a stint on Hellblazer. He wrote the Green Arrow Year One story that was so definitive at the time that it was the basis for an entire season on Arrow, and characters on the show were named after him as a salute to his influence. He's written Judge Dredd at 2000 AD, he's written Swamp Thing for DC, and even though I think it got a fair amount of flack from fans, I really enjoyed the Shadowland story for Daredevil, where he's taken over by the demon behind the ninja clan, The Hand, bit of a crossover event, and he's written plenty more. There are a few artists on the team to render our sequential panels monthly here, but Jock is the main creative directing force. He is phenomenal. His work is always sharp and kinetic, sparse in detail and gestural when opportune. He defines the vibe and the mood and gives life and energy to page after page of dialogue that otherwise could become boring visually. Like a true artist, Jock elevates the material. He's worked with Diggle on Green Arrow Year One, as well as doing work on Hellblazer and numerous other titles, including Batman Black Mirror and The Batman Who Laughs with Scott Snyder. The books originally collected the 32 issues into 5 volumes, but more recently have been consolidated into 2 bigger books, and the series follows a small unit of 5 special operations soldiers as they are double-crossed on a mission, and knowing they were set up, now focus on bringing down the crooked CIA spook behind it all, Max. And Max is a great boogeyman for the book, with much of the time spent pontificating on who he is, or if he's just a pseudonym like 007 being passed from agent to agent. This is a good mystery that holds your intrigue throughout the run. For the sake of your own enjoyment of the series, I'm going to avoid any big plot twists, so consider this the setup for the series and not the forensic post-analysis. I'm just saying, like, give me some grace if I'm being vague or glossing over any big plot points. Our crew of 5 main losers are Clay. He's the boss man, the leader of the group, a little older, a little more seasoned. There's Rock? I never know. I want to say Rock when I read it, but I'm pretty sure in the movie they say Roke. I see him as the second in command and usually the one to question Clay. Roke is more practical than idealistic. Jensen is the heart of the team, funny guy, runs his mouth, and does most of the tech stuff. Pooch is the pilot on the team. He's the only one who has a family that we see and meet and witness the consequences of them being AWOL. Now, Pooch could also be seen as the heart of the team, but I think he's more a reminder of vulnerability and mortality and consequences. He's the one who really has something to lose and the only one shown to have people who care about him. And then we have Cougar, the tight-lipped sniper with the cowboy hat. Deadly, but oh so cool, with this, like, zen vibe to him. The comics really have 2 other main characters. Stegler, who's like a good agent, the one who's told to bring in the losers, but on the case he realizes that they're actually the good guys. He's kind of a bit scruffy or run down, and just like he's like a little jaded, but only because he has principles in a job where that's a liability. And the other character is the wild card in the book, Aisha. Aisha is probably the most complex character in the series. She has her own agenda, but is teamed up with the losers because their goals align this time, and they both benefit from this alliance. But she is a dyed-in-the-wool savage murderer and freedom fighter and anti-imperialist with the skills to make her the most formidable character in the book. Her convictions run deeper than any of the others, and like I said, she's the wild card. You're not sure why she's doing the things she does, whether she can be trusted, and whether she should trust them. She's a live wire, and she tends to steal every scene she's in. Like, Jensen attempts to make small talk with her and asks if she collects anything, and she says when she was a little girl, she collected human ears. So even when the book is titled The Losers, she's still the biggest one on the cover, and for good reason. And throughout the book, there are betrayals and twists, and like I said, I don't want to ruin anything for new readers, but we get firefights and helicopter rescues and battles on oil rigs and all the cool stuff you'd expect from a modern espionage series. Now, one of the nice parts about this book is also that it's self-contained to 5 volumes, or 2 in the thicker format. It's just the 32 issues, and unlike other epic comic runs that span decades, dipping into this comic is not going to be a huge commitment. You'll read it in a few sittings. In 2010, there were 2 movies coming out about a team of 4 or 5 Special Forces soldiers who were betrayed out in the field and are now operating independently to clear their names. Maybe get a little revenge. And they're working with a hot agent lady who kicks asses and takes names. And they're up against a generically named rogue CIA spook who's kind of wacky and silly. These were action movies, hybrid comedies, Hollywood vehicles, and their casting was where both projects peaked, in my opinion. One is the A-Team, and the other is The Losers. Now, A-Team was released shortly after The Losers and had a better run at the box office, though not enough to get its own sequel. I think the A-Team had better name recognition, obviously, but the similarities were noticed by numerous critics, and I think that led to unfair comparisons with The Losers, looking like it was some kind of knockoff. Maybe it is a fair comparison. I mean, they're very similar. By the way, The Losers wasn't filmed in Vancouver, Canada. I know I say that all the time, but it wasn't. But the A-Team was. Okay, I just bring up the A-Team because the comparisons likely hurt The Losers, and also because I think in hitting a similar tone, the Hollywood sheen, the rounding off of some of the edges and changing Aisha's character, which we will touch on, these were all intentional decisions that made The Losers, I don't know, less defined and more generic as an action movie with some fun dialogue. And that's how it seems to have been received. The movie is for sure more contrived and Hollywood than the comic, but it's not too bad. They ham it up with more humor and stuff, like traveling in coffins. But some stuff feels changed to, I don't know, dumb down the movie a bit, and that has mostly to do with Aisha's character. But then they also included Jock in some of the production, so his art is actually featured in the movie, and that's pretty sweet. Now, if you want this movie version to work, the most important part is the group dynamic of the losers themselves. And lucky for us, the casting is maybe the best part of the production. Truly stellar stuff. The permanently stubbled Jeffrey Dean Morgan makes for a great Clay. He's older, he looks like a brown paper bag somebody crumpled up and then tried to smooth out again. Zoe Saldana plays Aisha. Now, I keep saying Aisha in the movie was butchered as a character, which has nothing to do with Zoe Saldana. Physically, she looks the part, and her resume of work features a fair amount of action films like Columbiana and Guardians of the Galaxy, so she's a perfect fit in that respect.
Do you have any hobbies?
When I was little, I collected human ears.
Good times.
My favorite character in the book is Jensen, and he's played by my favorite casting in the movie, Chris Evans. Like, seriously, he's half the reason to watch the movie and like 90% of its charm. And can we take a moment to recognize that low-key Evans is the comic book movie god? He's Captain America, obviously, but then he's also Johnny Storm from Fantastic Four, and then he's also in Scott Pilgrim and Snowpiercer, which is a comic book adaptation as well. And you could argue that Ryan Reynolds is also pretty impressive, being Deadpool, Hannibal from Blade Trinity, and Green Lantern, but Green Lantern and Blade Trinity both suck. Evans is really maintaining a high bar for quality. But I digress. Idris Elba is Roke and has a good edge to him and enough gravitas to push back against the Dean Morgan. Is it Jeffrey Dean? Do I say push back against Jeffrey Dean? You think his friends call him Jeff Morgan? He sounds like a dude who wants to borrow your leaf blower. Jeff Morgan came over the other day. Jeff? Jeff Morgan's a good guy. Okay, back on task. Columbus Short is super forgettable, but he's good in this role. He's just not really standout. And I know this because I recently did a graphic adaptation video on Whiteout. And yeah, I don't know if you guys saw that, but he was in that as well as the pilot, flying Kate Beckinsale everywhere. And, you know, I just didn't notice. Not only that, but I did a fan edit of Whiteout, shortened it, made it black and white just like the comic book. It's free on my Patreon if you want to go check it out. The Patreon's free. But I'm saying I worked on that for hours and dude did not stand out to me at all. So I don't know. Got a blank spot on Columbus Short. And last but not least, not Justin Long. I repeat, this is not Justin Long. Right? Is it Justin Long? Is this... How can this not be Justin Long? It's not, though. It's not. Anyway. To fit the plot of the comic from start to finish in the film, they had to condense the story by excising some scenes altogether. But there are many scenes that are straight off the page. Other scenes get moved around, like as an example, and without giving anything away, there's a sex scene in the story. In the film, it gets moved up earlier, perhaps to establish the dynamics more quickly, while in the book, it's a reveal that thickens the tensions and motives and gives the characters more angles, while the movie has a sex scene more played for laughs, almost. The villain, Max, in the movie is played by Jason Patric, but instead of being a mystery, he's played as munificent, as a James Bond-style villain with a quirky sense of unreality to him. It's intended to make him seem unpredictable, but it comes across as shticky, like there's always a bit of theater, and I think that this decision was indicative of the kind of tone the movie was going for that wasn't truly in the book.
What the hell was that?
You gave me the nod.
A hit him in the face nod, not a throw him off the roof nod.
Like, the book Max is more sinister by showing less. Movie Max seems like he's trying so hard. Like, he seems like an actor trying to play out a kooky, crazy guy, and it's cute, but I don't know. I don't want my villain cute. Another aspect of the film that stood out to me was how they intentionally toned down any anti-American sentiment. Aisha's character in the movie seems pretty neutral about her feelings towards America. In the comic, She hates America. There are a few pages that really lay out the corruption of the US government and its complicity in atrocities, but all of that is erased in the movie to instead portray the soldiers as the noble heroes and the bad guy as a rogue element, not as a product of US policies and normative operations. Movies that need military equipment for their production are often subject to military oversight before agreeing to cooperate. This is normal, but that in and of itself, that normalcy, that's also disappointing. There's a great part of the fourth volume where they're dissecting part of Max's schemes, and they lay out how he is playing the stock market based on global crises and making wild profits. And let's keep in mind, this came out almost 20 years before the pandemic. And then he also funds a terrorist group to help stoke exactly the kinds of crises that he can profit off of. And let's keep in mind that this was written long before Netanyahu was funding Hamas in 2018. And if I could just point out one more oddity, but the movie comes out just 9 years into the war in Iraq, and I bet the public had lost its appetite for that foreign intervention, and the military probably wasn't keen on highlighting that atrocity, so they set the movie in Bolivia. The book is not in Bolivia, but in January 2026, Trump invaded Venezuela, another South American country. Does that not feel like they intentionally wanted people primed for their next target and minds off of their current disaster? I don't know. And speaking of which, there's this great speech that Max gives in Volume 5 where he's talking about overthrowing other countries, and he's blackmailing the presidents of the United States by threatening to set off nukes in American cities. And his justification is simply, might makes right. He uses fear. He says, nobody can stop him. And it's more poetic than Trump, with him stating that they will carpet bomb the Middle East with crappy Americana. It's the same spell, but here it's being said by an evil, psychotic James Bond-style mad villain. So what's the difference, right? I guess because James Bond villains are almost kind of cool anyway. And then Aisha. Aisha's character doesn't really change her motivations, but also she just isn't as powerful and in charge or as psychotic or damaged. The movie just blunted her entire character savagely. I mean, she's supposed to be a native Bolivian in the movie, but she's also very American. Everything about her feels like she's part of the group when she's supposed to feel like an outsider, that her life has been so very different from anything that they've experienced. And maybe the best example of this is in a quote from Zoe Saldana herself from Collider, where she is describing Aisha, and she says, quote, "She's trying her best to play her cards right, but Jeffrey's character just gets to her. There's just something about him that she's unable to to fill her task, her mission," end quote. This is just so wrong for the character in the book to a shattering degree. It's indicative of how they went wrong. Jensen's off-kilter funny dialogue must have been so popular with the producers that they made them color the rest of the movie in that same light, and that matched the Hollywood veneer that A-Team had. To eliminate that comparison, they should have leaned into more of a Taken or Mission Impossible 3 hard edge aspect. I think it would have made the movie less silly, and it would have made A-Team look silly in comparison. And instead, they tried to out-Hollywood a bigger Hollywood production with more name recognition, and it just didn't work. The pro-America changes for the movie aren't surprising, but they do water down some of the spicier bits of intrigue that honestly give the book more credibility and authenticity, though it's likely something that you only miss by its absence if you've already read the books. I think most people will enjoy the books more than the movie. The movie is enjoyable, but not as good as you'd like it to be. Chris Evans is a treasure, and it's worth watching just for him. Did you like The Losers or A-Team more? Personally, I like The Losers more, but I love the comics, so I'm biased already. The A-Team was fun too, but it had its own problems, but also really perfect casting. Somebody mentioned in the comments recently that they weren't getting notifications for new videos, so hit the bell icon. I do one of these every week, or I'm trying to. I'm gonna burn out pretty quick at some point, I'm sure, but until then, I will see you next week.